Why are the files on JFK's assassination still being kept secret? After decades of demands and repeated delays in what was supposed to be a mandated release date, it appears that we may never see everything the government has on what happened November 22nd, 1963. On the Friday before the 4th of July, a couple weeks ago, President Biden quietly signed a, quote, final certification of files to be released, even though thousands still remain withheld or redacted. So our question is, why? What could be in the documents that is still so sensitive that the government just won't give them up? Joining me now with much more is New York Times chief White House correspondent Peter Baker. Peter, I almost made you an NBC correspondent. I'm sorry about that.
It's called the truth.
Let's talk about JFK and these files. I mean, 60 years later, the question, what could they possibly have that they don't want to release to us? And does that mean it's something that's really damning for the government?
Well, that's the big question, of course, because we don't know. It's not what we don't know, right? The government says, look, there's nothing mysterious here. They have released 99% of the documents that have been reviewed over the last 30 years, and the remaining few thousand that haven't been fully released are mainly small redactions, like the names of individuals who might still be alive, or addresses or social security numbers, or things that the president doesn't have the authority to release, like grand jury secrecy information or tax information. And that beyond that, there's really nothing all that mysterious about. But of course, you can imagine that's not an answer that really satisfies at least all of the researchers who spent a lot of years looking at this. They look at this and say, there must be something else there. Why are they holding back? What do they have after 60-some years since this assassination that really remains in some way, creating some sort of danger or damage to national security if they were to release it? And so you have this, that lingering suspicion out there from people who spend a lot of time thinking, we don't trust the government, because in fact there's reasons not to trust the government.
So President Biden signed this final certification. Some of the documents were released. Why weren't the others released? What did a judge do to keep the others secret?
Yeah, so the Mary Farrell Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that has already sued about these files, went to court looking for an injunction against the president's latest order, and the judge on Friday night says, no, you don't get an injunction. He did allow parts of their lawsuit to go forward. They'll be continuing litigation on this. But broadly speaking, what you have are 2,100 documents that have been withheld in full or in part because of the president's actions. Another 2,500 that have been withheld in full or in part because of issues that are unrelated to the president. Again, things like tax information, things that can't be released under law. There's always tantalizing things in the things that they have released in these last few months. Nothing that changes the fundamental understanding of the assassination necessarily, but things that researchers would say, suggest a sensitivity on the part of the intelligence agencies to tell us things that they believe they don't want out there. Examples would be the name of the guy who opened Lee Harvey Oswald's mail for the CIA prior to the assassination. They just released that name for the first time 60 years later, 30 years after the gentleman in question died. Why did it take so long? Researchers look at that and say, well, there must be a reason. What is that reason?
Peter, one other question. What does the CIA have to do with this? What are the questions surrounding the CIA?
Well, for the CIA, of course, they have long been sensitive to interactions with Oswald, what they knew about Oswald and didn't know about him. Oswald, of course, had lived in the Soviet Union, so he was being monitored to some degree by the government. He visited Mexico City, and that was, there's a lot of talk about what that was all about and what the CIA station down there knew. And what the CIA, of course, has been concerned about in the last 60 years, what they say that they're concerned about is they don't want sensitive intelligence sources and information to be released, and that a lot of things got caught up in the JFK papers aren't really about the assassination. They're sort of tangential, like our plans for Cuba, and things like that, operations that really aren't directly related to JFK. They just assume not have be discussed or revealed.
Peter Baker, thank you very much. And coming up, what actually is a living wage in America in 2023? First up, the quote, an absolute collapse, what the dual writers and actors strike will do not just to production, but the release of movies and TV already finished.
Let's get back to the JFK deal. The fact of the matter is, they have had endless amount of time to brush over this and to scourge it to the degree that now today, whenever they do come out with the facts,
and say, well, there must be a reason.
Because there's been so many illegitimacies with our government, the majority of the people ain't going to believe them. It's kind of like the little boy that cried wolf. Once you cry wolf enough, eventually people don't no longer want to hear you crying wolf, and they'll basically stop their ears up because they feel like that the little boy's already done this so many times, there ain't no need of listening to him because he's an idiot. So basically, that's what the American people in the world are looking at whenever they look at what's going on here over a case 60 years old. You know good and well that there's nobody alive today. You'd have had to at least been 18 to 20 years old to have been a part of any of this. And even if you was 18 to 20 years old, by now you'd already be in your 80s, soon to be dead. So it's obvious that they're trying to hide something. But yet now they'll get on TV and they'll debate and they'll put down their citizens because they feel like that there's some sort of active role that could be played in either a coup or a takeover pertaining to the United States government. Well, whenever you have a group of people for the past 30, 40 years that's been lying to us so much, especially going all the way back into that assassination period, no wonder their citizens is debunking the things that the American government is now talking about. They've lost faith in the institution. That's the reason why that I say the Union has failed us. The State of the Union, the very thing that our ancestors in the South went to war with our ancestors in the North about, and there was a bloodbath of over 30,000 plus people that was killed that they know about. That ain't counting all the rapes and all the other murders that went on that they didn't know nothing about. People that wound up being drowned and floating down a river somewhere are being hung. But all this illegitimacies is now coming home to the American government, and because of it, along with Donald Trump and the classified records and etc., is now coming home to them. What I was told, I don't know if it's truthful or not, and I would be speculating if I did say that it was truthful, but what I was told is that there was two major groups of people that knew about the forthcoming plans to kill that man sitting in the back seat right there with his wife. One of the groups was CIA, the other group was Homeland Security, Secret Service at the time. The way I understand it, in which it may be bass backwards, I don't know, is that the CIA was trying to prevent from this occurring, but they got there too late because Secret Service had already accomplished what they had accomplished. But then again, it could be the other way around. It could have been the actual CIA military stance because of something that man either had done or had not done, or what he was going to expose to the American people pertaining to the one world government, and also the ridiculous things that he done up here in Kentucky. It could have been the other way around. I don't think it was. I think it was Secret Service that was involved in their own presidential assassination, and that's the reason why to this day they're still keeping it under wraps, because in reality it really don't have nothing to do with anybody that's living now after this length of time to say, oh, we're doing this because it may affect too many innocent lives. Well, first of all, if it's going to affect anybody's life, odds are they're probably not innocent. And for an American government that wants its people to swear under a Bible, to take a vow, do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? But then they see a government that's lying to them and won't tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. It's contradicting hypocrisy. Contradicting hypocrisy that now the people are wisening up to, just like they're wisening up to who actually caused a great deal of people to be put into the poorhouse pertaining to OPEC and pertaining to the oil company industries, along with all the greenhouse and the planet warming. The people are now becoming aware of the truth. And the truth is something that the American government does not want fully exposed. And if you don't believe me, just look. Proof is in the pudding. Look at how that they handled the situation with Donald J. Trump. They knew. The White House has always known that various presidents has taken home stuff. Regardless whether it was the Clintons, regardless whether it was the Obamas, I don't think that they did get anything on the Obamas, because the Obamas probably realized that they was going to be scrutinized more so than they have any other presidency. But Bush's, all the other different presidents, who knows? You may could go to Carter and find something down there in Georgia somewhere laying around that belongs to we the people. Illegitimacies. It's illegitimacies that has put us at $33 trillion. It's illegitimacies that has caused this great nation to go belly up and to be upside down the way that it is, with all the fentanyl and all the illegal immigrants coming over to our country. It's time that the American people took their country back over. And the only way to do this, I personally believe, is to bring in a private party, like a Tea Party, like a Perot, Ross Perot. They're going to have to bring in somebody that has the gump, that has the knowledge, that has the wits, that has what it takes to get up there and tell the American people where our government has failed us and how we're going to take basically the horse back over pertaining to the reins and try to balance by taking the wrongs and turning them into rights. That's the only way that I can see that the White House is going to come out even halfway on top. Because as of right now, all it is now is just a Wild Wild West show. It's a free-for-all. And it's really sad, because after 60 plus years, come on. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Donald Trump say that he was going to expose the JFK assassination records to the American people? But of course, it was Donald Trump that told the American people that the American people still hadn't got down to the bottom of 9/11. But then Donald Trump will turn right around and buddy up with the people that I know masterminded 9/11, and he does too. There's two illegitimacies going on within our government that doesn't just make the American people question the authenticity of the things that's going on in our government, but across the board, from A to Z. From A to Z. One of the things that I have discovered just within the past few days is that I have looked,
like our plans for Cuba.
I have looked and looked and looked. What would have motivated a group of people to have done what they done in coming at me the way that they come at me, even though I was out here supporting 100% an American, flying 100% of American flags, 100% of supporting our military and being a patriotic person. Why would have this community have risen up the way that it did, even though I was doing the proper patriotic thing? And the bottom line is this: they didn't want Dennis James Jackson to be looked upon as being a good patriot. They had already come to the conclusion that I was rotten, I was sorry, I was no good, I was a scoundrel, and what went on in my life, either in Martin, Tennessee, Northwest Kentucky, or Oklahoma, a lot of them was glad that it occurred, and what they was going to do was get on board towards proving that I was nothing more than a scoundrel, because they didn't realize why I went out west to begin with. And to be quite honest with you, these people around here don't care. The only thing they care about is their own personal lives. But it wasn't that I was the monster. It was them being the monster that was trying to accuse somebody that wasn't a monster of being a monster. They've done the exact same thing to the Lord Jesus Christ, and they have done this to other people again and again and again by taking somebody that's good and promoting them as being bad, or taking somebody that's bad and trying to promote them as being good. And that is the fact. So what was they actually trying to do? They was trying to steal or take away my integrity. They wanted to shame me. They wanted to put me in a category that I was a worthless, no count, no good human being, and that I didn't have a right to not only go out into the eyes of the general public and telling my story, but I didn't even have the right towards flying the American flag. And the reason why is because they was afraid that somebody may take interest in my story or my life in investigating and finding out, well, this guy he ain't no anti-American. He's not a terrorist. He's not never been violent. He's not never done this or done that or done all these other things that they're wanting to put him in the category of. It's because the meanness. These people around here was mean that was involved in doing this to my brother and I, including the Weakley County courts. I think it stems off from what went on in the early 1800s pertaining to the Night Riders, the earthquake, the Civil War, Nathan Bedrick Forrest, towards a deep-rooted hate that was in this area, and to this day they're still just as prejudiced, and they're still just as they would still like to segregate. They still segregate. They still segregate in around here and in the South in different areas by not participating in letting the blacks be judges, or the blacks be this, or the blacks be that. That it's predominant white race, and they're going to keep it as a white race. And basically, it's primarily because these people that are in power don't want to give up their power, and it doesn't matter whether or not they're right or wrong. It doesn't matter how they become in power. They could have become in power in a very, very corrupt way, but because they got the power, people like us are supposed to shut up. We're supposed to be quiet. And it's really, really sad, because this is one of the main reasons why that's for the past 60 plus years. I was born in 1961. This is the year, 2023. So I'm 62 years old. Ever since that I come into this world, I've realized the dirty, stinking, underhanding, lying, conniving people that's in these powerful positions that has basically brought America to what it is today, towards all the violence, all the drugs, all the uncertainty, being $32+ trillion in debt, and now it's reached a point with the environmental changes pertaining to global warming that they can no longer deny that they have made one of the most cruelest, insensitive mistakes that humans could have ever made pertaining to the warming and basically bringing civilization to a state of distinction, because it wasn't addressed at the time that it should have been addressed in, because there was too much greed and too much selfishness going on. And trust me, they do not like people like me. They'll tell you, oh, we ain't got nothing against Juby. Oh, Juby, he's not under no investigation. I guarantee you, they are listening to every word that I say. And even though they may not be helping me, by taking my material and putting it out there to the general public, and there may be some of them that does do that, but by and large, they're not out to help you. They're not out to help other people. They're out to help themselves. They're out to help their own party. But I guarantee you this, if I was to say the wrong thing, regardless whether it was in a threatening manner or in a horrible demeanor manner, in any type of way, they would immediately bring out that video or bring out those texts that I had put out to society, put out in open population, they would put it out to demonize and dehumanize me that much more. In other words, we're dealing with an entity in America that can dish it out, but they can't take it. And as soon as you give them any type of leeway, and I tend to wonder that this may have very well been what happened to other preachers in the past, especially Billy Graham. I'm going to use Billy Graham as an example here, Franklin Graham's dad, is that maybe they found out something on Billy Graham and they cornered him up and basically they blackmailed him and said, you know what, if you don't lighten up on demonizing us and dehumanizing us pertaining to us doing our jobs, we're going to come down on you and we're going to make your life miserable. I mean, look what they've done to Jimmy Swaggart. They basically crucified him on open national TV while they was making money off of Bill Clinton and sniggering and laughing and thinking that it was cute with Monica Lewinsky. This is an evil, demonic society. And whenever the Lord said that he cometh for those that needed a physician, he knows that he didn't come back for these warmongers and whoremongers, and he knows that he didn't come back for the illegitimacy people that knows good and well that their souls has already done been sold to the devil. Jesus come back for those that are struggling. Jesus come back for those that needed leadership. Jesus come back for those that needed a Savior. He didn't come for those that needed not a physician, because there's those out there that has this self-righteousness that thinks that they can't do no wrong. Or there's those out there that's already done thrown up their hands and said, you know what, I'd rather serve the devil than I would God because I can't live this life of righteousness. So those people is basically already done sold out to the devil. Don't you think Jesus, God's only begotten Son, knew that before he ever come down here? Sure he did. He knew that he was going to be rejected. He knew that. And now 30 plus years later, I'm bringing my story out before the American people, and there are certain people in this area and throughout this country that don't like it, because now I'm putting a actual face to the story. I'm putting a face to the mouthpiece, and because I'm a real human being with real red blood, and I'm an American citizen, they don't like it. They don't like it at all. So has there been a conspiracy in America? Every bit so. Just like what these people right here are fighting for, pertaining to the Hollywood movie screen. You know, I couldn't tell you the amount of times whenever the VHS movie department come on board, that how many times that I have watched the FBI warnings either right before or right after a movie that would tell you specifically that you would go to jail up to 5 years if you was caught copywriting or doing something pertaining to piracy on that particular movie, because the people that made that movie own the rights to that movie. Now, since the internet has sprawled out pertaining to smartphone technology, basically it's a Wild Wild West show. And the FBI can't even control what the FBI was supposed to be supporting, enforcing back years and years ago when there wasn't nothing but VHS FBI warnings. Now, anybody can streamline. That's the reason why these people are striking. They're saying, my God, it's a Wild Wild West show, and even though we own the rights on patterning our movie or patterning this or the rights on that, once it gets released out there, it's like a forest fire. It just goes everywhere. And it's like, who would want to buy something if they already know the ending of the movie? You've already done tainted the movie. You've already done spoiled the movie. And that's what they're getting at. That's the reason why they're striking the way that they're striking, because it's affecting people's livelihoods. Like I said before in some of my other work, the internet in ways has been a good thing, but in other ways it is destroying people's, basically their livelihoods. And as we get further and further into this, we're going to see just exactly how damaging that smartphone technology pertaining to artificial intelligence really and truly is. Because whenever it comes to the secrets of Washington, D.C., eventually those secrets are going to be revealed. The truth is going to come out. Now, they can taint it, they can color it up, They can try to say that people like me is mentally incompetent, I'm psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced, and I need to be put away somewhere. But I promise you, whenever enough people hear the truth, and those that are seeking the truth, and whenever they get enough of all this heat, whenever they get enough of all this stuff that's going on in their lives, that's affecting their lives, maybe then, maybe somebody like me can gain by tipping off their ear so that they'll listen to what I'm trying to say, and they won't be listening to want to gather up evidence to destroy me, but they'll actually be listening to me in support of the Windmill Ministries missions that I have solely sold myself out towards for the past 30 plus years in getting my message out to the general public. It was the Christian society that went up against the message. It's the Christian society that has helped put us where we are right now, towards compromising. Jesus is a graceful God. Jesus is a graceful God. Jesus is a loving person. Jesus this, Jesus that. Grace this, grace that. Merciful this, merciful that. Which he is. Don't get me wrong, which he is. But there's also another side to Jesus. Just like there's two sides to us, there's two sides to God. There's a good side and there's a bad side to God. That's what people don't want to preach. They don't want to convince their congregation that if you continue to bite the hand that is feeding you, eventually the hand will in fact quit feeding you. And it talks about that very, very clearly, of how that he will take his blessings away from one generation or from one nation and give it to another generation or give it to another nation that is truly subservient to him, and it truly is serving him towards a truthful, righteous, holy, eternal God. It says that plainly in the words of red, that's exactly what Jesus, God, Heavenly Father, the Trinity will do to those that are either wish-washy or those that are compromising to the degree that basically the Bible, according to the teachings of Christ, you just as well take it and walk on it, tromp on it, just like salt, because it's lost its potency. What good is it other than to be trampled down by the foot of man? Trampled down by the foot of man is what Jesus said. Imagine that.
We are 87% of our members are not making the health insurance minimum to get covered for health insurance, and the money that's concentrated at the top isn't not just trickling down to the bottom, it's not trickling down to the middle anymore.
Actors and writers are back on the picket lines in Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, and Hawaii for the first full week of their joint strike, shutting the industry down. Both guilds are demanding wage increases, protections from AI, and restructured residuals in the age of streaming. Studio heads like Disney's Bob Iger have called their conditions unrealistic. There were no new negotiations over the weekend, and some industry watchers say an agreement is not likely anytime soon.
There doesn't seem to be enough trust and energy to get it settled soon. But these conditions will potentially produce an absolute collapse of an entire industry.
Joining me now, Deadline Hollywood senior editor Dominic Patton. Dom, thanks for being with us. A collapse of an entire industry, according to Barry Diller. Is it that dire?
Well, I think Mr. Diller, who's got a great expertise and a great pedigree in the industry, might be a bit hyperbolic here, but certainly people are looking over the edge, Katie. I mean, we're going into the fall season, which has been dramatically realigned already. You're seeing shows like Yellowstone and Miss Marvel showing up on CBS and ABC, respectively. Things are going to change a lot. Are we right over the edge? We're looking, but I don't think we've quite crossed the precipice yet.
The actors are saying that they're in it for the long haul. I had Fran Drescher on the other day saying that they're going to do it for as long as it takes. The studios are talking about, as you've reported, breaking these guilds, having people lose their homes if necessary, breaking them because they want to avert more potential strikes from other unions. Is there something on the horizon, something that you can identify that might help move the needle on this, get people back to the negotiating table?
Well, I would say, Katie, not right now. I mean, we're seeing a little bit of movement both out on the picket lines and from City Hall. Mayor Karen Bass today put out another statement asking for a fair and equitable agreement. Adam Schiff, the congressman and potential U.S. senator from California, was out on the picket lines today talking about AI. I don't know yet if they've got the kind of heft that can bring this together. I think a lot of people are also looking beyond what's happening on the picket lines, which is very, very serious, and looking what might happen in the broader implications for LA County and New York to some extent, and seeing what can happen in what might be a very, very hot summer economically, with people suffering from more than just the heat.
Is this going to require a change in tone from the likes of Bob Iger and other studio heads who have, I mean, he's gotten a lot of criticism for that interview he did in Sun Valley with CNBC, coming off as tone deaf after he signed that 2-year contract.
What it's going to require is for a government to be honest with its people.
Build back the trust that Barry Diller says has been lost. A change in tone, public-facing tone.
Oh, absolutely.
From people.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been pretty strident on both sides, but I wouldn't say that you can make an equivalency there. The studio heads have really, you know, Iger's statements were galvanizing to people on the picket line. It wasn't quite let them eat cake, but it sure felt like it to a lot of people. And I think that combined with the legacy and the history here over decades and decades of people feeling that they're being screwed out of this. I mean, I'll tell you something that's happened this weekend. A lot of people, we don't often talk about how much we really make in America, but a lot of people have started putting up online their actual residuals from shows that are on streamers, shows like Orange is the New Black and other ones. And we're talking pennies over months and months and months. So that's bringing home the reality of this economically. So I think that there still has to be a larger discussion. Maybe some time will heal some wounds, but I think everyone needs to change their tone, especially from the C-suites of the studios.
You're bringing up a good point with Orange is the New Black. The New Yorker had a great article talking about how that foretold what was going to come. The amount of money that most actors on that show were being paid was nothing. A lot of them had to keep their day jobs. And when they talk about residuals and you say pennies, they will literally show up checks that'll be 27 cents as their residuals. Was that standard? Was that across all of the streamers? Unless you're one of the big names, you were basically making nothing?
Pretty much. I mean, these are agreements and contracts that, you know, you can say, well, I wish we hadn't get such a little amount of money, but that was the deals that were made. The thing is, these deals were made as they were made in the past about DVDs and videotape and residuals back in the 60s. You know, that trust, that distrust, I think that we're seeing out on the picket lines with the studios from the writers and now the actors, that's been growing over decades and decades and decades. There are some very bad business decisions that were made here by a number of people, a number of companies, some executives with those companies still, some not. And I think that we're seeing the chickens come home here. The question is whether or not calmer minds will prevail and people will finally sit down and make a deal, which they will eventually. But it looks like it's going to be very hot and heavy out there for a while.
And Dominic Patton, thank you very much for coming back. It's been good to have you. Let's talk about what people make and what exactly a living wage is. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. It has not changed since 2009. But a dollar, as you know, does not go as far as it used to back when it was set, especially with the historic inflation we've been seeing recently. So how are Americans making ends meet? Joining me now is NBC News correspondent Lindsay Reiser. She took a close look at the meaning of the living wage from Meet the Press Reports. It's an interesting...
They're tightening their belts. They're doing without. They're not no longer going to the lakes every weekend. They're no longer buying a brand new car every 3 years. Their life has basically been put on hold. That's how they're surviving. And some of them ain't even surviving that way.
Living minimum wages for people in this country and the people who are saying that the economic success that we've experienced over the decades has not trickled down to them.
It's such a meta idea. What is a living wage? And of course, it's going to depend on where you live. But a few months ago, we set out to find out how people are doing, how they're feeling. We know people vote with their pocketbooks. And so we met a couple of families, very different places, but dealing with some similar struggles. So first, let's go to Ohio. We talked to a woman named Kanika Williams. She's a single mom. She's got 4 sons. And she pieces together her employment. So she cleans houses. She drives for DoorDash. She has a part-time job at UPS. UPS. And so she makes about $20 an hour in some of those gig jobs, about $16.50 an hour in that part-time UPS job. She brings in $1,500 a month. She has a really full life. She volunteers. That's the video that we're seeing now. And she says she never wants her sons to grow up and feel like they're poor. And then we talked to Taylor and Maggie Mendez in Melbourne, Florida. And they had a really rocky start moving from New York to Florida. They were working overnights, minimum wage jobs, sometimes a little bit above minimum wage. Now Taylor works as a bank teller and he makes $20 an hour working 30 to 40 hours a week. So they bring in roughly $2,500 a month. Both families, though, are getting assistance, so in the form of food stamps, rental assistance, Medicaid. Let's go ahead and play an excerpt of some of our piece from Meet the Press reports. The fact that neither family can make ends meet without help begs the question, what constitutes a living wage? MIT has a living wage calculator which looks at the cost of 8 basic needs in each county in the U.S. According to that, Taylor would need to make $37.97 an hour to support his family, nearly twice his current wage.
I mean, it's surprising, but sadly it's not surprising.
Living in Cuyahoga County, Kanika, who makes less than $20 an hour, would need to make $40.44 an hour, or roughly $84,000 a year. She says she's afraid to lose her benefits if she makes too much money. Do you find, though, that the issue is if you make a certain amount, you won't be able to qualify for those anymore, but that extra amount doesn't replace the help you're getting?
It is exactly like that. They're going to take probably Medicaid or food stamps. So now when you take my food stamps, what I'm trying to build is gone. You're not allowing me to do what the program is meant for. And the program is meant for people getting back to stabilization.
So there's so many issues dealing with, that so many Americans are dealing with. It's the idea of benefits. Well, if I make too much, I'll replace the benefits, but what I'm replacing it with, it's still not enough. Kanika has a felony, so she actually can't work in the field in which she has a degree. And so it's just kind of a confluence of all of this. And at the end of the day, they're not asking for anything in particular. I asked, what do you want Congress to do? They don't necessarily have an answer at the tip of their tongue, but they know they would like, for example, Kanika, she makes $1,500. I told you, I asked her, what's your definition of a livable wage? And she said $3,500. So I can afford my bills and then get something in the bank.
Got it. And she works for UPS part-time. UPS is threatening to strike at the end of the month. 340,000 workers there who will also be potentially collecting unemployment for who knows how long. Lindsay Reiser, thank you very much for joining us and bringing us that story. I know you were on another story today, but we love this one so much we wanted to talk to you about it. Coming up next, Russia pulled out of a crucial grain deal.
It's unraveling.
Food security.
It's unraveling, and now our politicians don't know what to do other than to procrastinate stuff and put it off and put it off and put it off. Well, in the meantime, people are struggling, people are having to do without, people are having to wear shoes until their sandals is coming off, people has to go and live with other people that they really wouldn't be living with, or they become homeless and they're out here living on the streets. We have basically a nation that, theoretically speaking, has in fact bankrupted itself whenever you owe this kind of money. And now, just as the guy was talking about, the chickens has come home to roost. You've got all them people that worked for Hollywood that wasn't per se what you would call Hollywood movie stars, that was gathering up all the big money. And now these people are struggling because they'd already done set their lives towards having a halfway decent car, living in a halfway decent neighborhood, and maybe 2/3 of them or maybe half of them was living above their means. But now reality has come home to them, and now they're having to take second seat. Why are they having to take second seat? Meta, YouTube, Twitter, Angie's List, all the other social media platforms. It has basically taken the biscuit out of their mouth. And like I said, the United States federal law enforcement agencies let this happen right in front of everybody's eyes. because I couldn't tell you the amount of VCRs that I watch various movies, and either before or after, or sometimes both, it would explain to you very, very thoroughly that if you was caught piracy, taking that movie and recording it and then selling it online or even giving it away, I guess you could probably get in trouble about it. I don't know. But that's the reason why that I solely stick to news articles, because I know that the news articles are public domain. And if I get in trouble pertaining to a news article, odds are it's the news article that should get in trouble because I got in trouble.
And the Crimean Peninsula came under fire from several Ukrainian naval drones, according to the Kremlin. You can see in this video the partial collapse of the bridge as it is being surveyed. The video, released by the Russian Investigative Committee, shows soldiers assessing further damage and collecting evidence from the attack. Ukrainian Defense Ministry has declined to comment, but Ukrainian media is reporting the attack was a special operation involving the Security Service of Ukraine and the Ukrainian Navy. Joining me now is NBC News foreign correspondent Josh Letterman. So Josh, tell us what else we know.
Well, Katie, we are following these two major stories at the same time. On the one hand, this attack on the Crimea bridge, which was recently attacked back in October. And on the same day, Russia announcing it's pulling out of that crucial grain deal that has allowed critical exports like wheat, corn oil to get to developing nations in North Africa and in the Middle East since the middle of last year. We're hearing the White House in the last hour or so responding to Russia's decision to pull out of that grain deal, calling it dangerous and irresponsible. They are pointing out that since Russia announced that just today, prices on those commodities have already jumped up several percentage points. And so that is what is really fueling the concern about how this is going to worsen global food insecurity. As that news broke, U.S. Aid Administrator Sam Power was actually in Ukraine. Our NBC News team was there on the ground with her. Here's what she had to say.
This is a reckless decision that will have profound human consequences. And it's just another example of Russian callousness and disregard for human lives and livelihoods, not only here in Ukraine, but all around the world.
All over the world.
U.S. officials at this point don't believe that Putin made that decision in relation to the attack on the Crimea bridge. They believe he was already planning to pull out of that grain deal. But in the meantime, we are hearing from President Putin, who is calling the attack on that bridge terrorism. He says Russia's military will retaliate. Katie?
Josh Letterman in London. Josh, thank you very much. And that right there is going to do it for me today. Deadline White House starts right now.
What you're dealing with is the blind leading the blind.
You could fly. It was a $700 billion jet loaded with bombs, but you wouldn't be allowed, if you were still serving, to make decisions about your health care. The public gets this, and this isn't a right-left thing. This is increasingly not a red state, blue state thing. Abortion bans are failing in red states. This would put the military outside of the mainstream, and that seems dangerous to military recruitment, military readiness. Who has that conversation with the country?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's now front and center in the political world. You know, the Republican Party is taking these culture wars and inserting them into the military, and it hurts. Who has that conversation? Well, I think Democrats have to stand up in the House and the Senate and have the backs of women in the military right now. It is a military readiness thing. And look, if you don't believe me, what Senator Tuberville is doing, in particular, multiple secretaries of defense, past secretaries of defense, on both sides of the aisle have come out and said, this is actually hurting our national security, holding up these positions in order to push through your agenda. You can debate that Pentagon policy all you want, but you don't hold up 300, 200, 300, 400 positions and hurt our national security in the process. I happen to believe that if you're a woman in the military, that you don't get a choice of where you get stationed, and you deserve that health care. You would give it to any man. If he needed a procedure that could only be available 3 states over, you would allow him to go there. The military is simply doing the same thing here.
And those women deserve for us to keep it front and center and to keep talking about it. Amy McGrath and Don Ambers, thank you for doing just that. I appreciate both of you. When we come back, another big drop from ProPublica, this one on the potential illegality of billionaire donor Harlan Crow taking Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas on luxury vacations aboard his super yacht. The reporter who broke that story joins us after a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Aboard his super yacht. The reporter who broke that story joins us after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Once more, we started out with the Kennedy assassination, of the illegitimacies of a government that's been steadily lying to its people. Then we go to the strikers pertaining to artificial intelligence and what kind of damage it is going to be doing to various occupations. I've said all along that the smartphone technology pertaining to artificial AI, it's going to be as a Trojan horse. It's going to have good aspects in one way, but in another way, it's going to actually be devastating into people's lives. And what we're seeing with the news camera crews and the actor crews and all that, we're seeing the repercussions of artificial intelligence here. You know, we got UPS fixing to go on a strike. I don't know that they ever settled the deal out on the Atlantic coast pertaining to a lot of barges and people like that was going on strike. But then you got other problems by looking at the war with Putin. He is doing what he is doing with the grain, intentionally knowing, because those people stay on top, or they're supposed to, of their game, by knowing that there's been great flooding over here and great flooding over here, and there's been weather disasters over here as far as droughts or this going on. And it's basically holding the world hostage and doing it in the form of raising the prices so high pertaining to food that basically ain't nobody going to be able to afford to eat other than those that's already got big, thick pockets. My son, it had reached a point that I could not communicate with him like I wanted to. And I would have done anything in the world to have talked him out of quitting his job that he originally had, seniority leadership over for about 20 years, working for a company out of Denver, Colorado called Brundage and Bone. I would have done anything to have talked him out of not quitting them, and I would have darn sure done anything in the world towards talking him out of not purchasing a brand new home somewhere. I can't mention where it is because he gets mad if I identify any personal information about him, so I won't. But I was told in 2014 or 2013 that if there's ever been a time that people needed to pay off everything that they owed for and no longer owe anything, that was the time to do so. Actually, there was a hint of it in Katrina in 2005 of various big players that was already looking through, sifting through the smoke and realizing that this country is on a downhill decline. And there was people that was actually taking things and moving them around so that whenever this did occur, it wouldn't be so devastating in their lives. They were smart enough to see the train wreck up the road. Now, the American people in the world has been sitting by and they've been listening to lie after lie after lie after lie. And if it's not Wall Street lying, it's this one lying, it's that one lying about how good things are. But whenever you have just got through hearing from the radio announcer, TV announcer, of the disparities pertaining to the grain, you do not have to be a well-educated person to identify where this is going to go. I've made mention of this before. Whenever I was only about 6 or 7 years old, listening to some old men over here sitting around a hot belly stove, spitting their tobacco off into a spit tune, talking about how that one day a loaf of bread was going to cost $10 a loaf, I, as well as others, basically laughed those men, elderly men, out of that room, because at the time a loaf of bread was going for about 16 cents a loaf. Since then, I have seen various loaves of bread, depending upon what company and what type of bread, going for as much as $4 a loaf. So if this takes place with the rising once more of the grain, added on to all the flooding over in North Korea, China, and Japan, and all the heat indifferences that's going on, that's basically roasting or diminishing the growth on a lot of your crops that's supposed to be pollinating during this time, that ain't going to be pollinating, and because they don't pollinate, they're not going to be able to grow the ear near as big, not near as long, not near as wide around. The kernels won't be near as big, so you're not going to have near as many bushels per acre. But to see somebody like Putin do what he just got through doing on an international scale, he's no longer trying to make war with just the Ukrainian people. The Russian government is now making war with the world. And whenever enough people hurt, do without, lose their homes, lose their houses, wind up on the streets, can't get health care insurance, can't get this, can't get that, whenever enough people go through enough suffering, they'll realize that this guy, he needs to be taken out. And I said that within the first 72 hours, whenever the crap all broke out, that the American government did not need to take this guy with a grain of salt, that we're no longer dealing with goat herders. We're dealing with a group of people that are very, very aggressive. If you study their lineage going all the way back, you'll understand just exactly who they are whenever it comes to wanting to dominate. And they basically made fools out of themselves because, first of all, they didn't take the Ukrainian government over during the time frame that they thought they was. Secondly, they made fools out of themselves by saying that they got cheated, knowing good and well that it wasn't our fault in how that they was running their affairs over there, pertaining to the oligarchs. And thirdly, now they've made fools out of themselves how that they don't care about human life towards bombing fraternity wards and hospitals and daycare centers and weddings and funerals and all the above. When is the world going to wake up in understanding that this individual, this federation that they call themselves now, is basically on the move, on the march, in wanting to buckle or put the hurt on everybody in holding everybody hostage, especially whenever it comes to their nuclear missiles? Because I just about be willing to guarantee you this. If President Putin, God forbid that he does, let's hope that he don't, but if he was to blow up probably 2 to 4 missiles, not only would that be a awakening for the world, but there's various people in the world that would go to trembling and shaking, knowing that the next one could be coming over their head, to the degree that they'd be willing to sell out immediately just so they'd live another extra day. So whenever you get to looking at integrity, just like the movie The Pale Horseman, the Pale Rider, there in the middle of the movie, whenever they was at war with the guy that was rich, and he offered him a very, very handsome amount of money to just basically pick up stakes and move. And there was one individual in the movie that spoke up and said, okay, we all pack up and leave because the hood has offered that amount of money. But what's going to be the price of our integrity and our pride the next time? And the next time? And the next time? Because once you have put a price tag on yourself, you have now weakened yourself in others understanding, oh, this guy's got a price. This company's got a price. They're willing to shut up and sit down. They're willing to back off the product that they're making. Oh, they're willing to do this. Oh, they're willing to do that. You have to hold the lines. If democracy is going to win pertaining to this war of autocracy against democracy, you're going to have to hold the lines. But you're going to have to hold people accountable and responsible that is causing these irreversible damages. And whenever you have a country such as Ukraine that has affected, I guess, about 15 million people directly, and probably another 10, 12, 15 million people indirectly, whenever you're affecting 30 plus million people, that's like the whole state of Texas. That's like the whole state of California. That's a lot of people that you're affecting. In the meantime, they're sitting back sniggering and laughing because basically they've already done reached the point of no return, that it really doesn't matter if the end comes today or if the end comes next week or if the end comes a week from next week. They've already done started the momentum in basically bringing the world to its knees. And if we don't watch, that's exactly what's going to happen, because if you let them take an inch, they will take a mile. If you let them take a mile, they'll take 10 miles. If you let them take 10 miles, they'll take 100 miles. That's the reason why the Ukrainian people right now are fighting tooth and nail. This is not a game. People's lives is on the line. Whenever you do what they just got through doing with a boycott, and that's exactly what it is, it's a boycott, you will affect thousands, if not millions of people's lives to be able to not have that bread and butter on their table at night where they can productively feed their family, especially the children, where they'll still have good, healthy lives to where they can think good and work adequately. You're affecting the world. You're no longer just affecting one little bitty group of people. You're affecting the whole world whenever they have done what they have done. As I've said, artificial intelligence in ways is going to be a good thing. But artificial intelligence in ways is going to be a bad thing. Which leads me to the final thing that I want to say pertaining to all of this. Because it's obviously we are marching to a different drumbeat than what we was 30, 40, 50 years ago. The best that any of us can hope for in life, regardless whether it's myself, my dad, my son, my immediate family members, my friends, my Christian brothers and sisters in Christ, the best that any of us can hope for in life is that our good qualities will eventually outweigh our bad. Because I promise you, we're going to have good and bad qualities. No matter how smart you are, how wealthy you are, how poor you are, how pretty you are, you're going to have bad and good qualities. Which leads me to this. the world is going to have to make a decision. Is artificial intelligence going to be worth the misery and the sorrow that it's going to cause in the balance that eventually the good will outweigh the bad? Or is the bad going to even get worser, and maybe we're just now seeing the beginning phases of artificial intelligence pertaining to people streaming and stealing, piracy, stealing, taking stuff that don't belong to them and basically either giving away or selling it. You know, it used to be that these industries could basically put a cap on things, and with the law enforcement, the FBI, like I was saying, you know, almost on every VH movie, it'll talk about piracy and how much the fine's going to be and possible up to jail time. Whenever this industry has now lost its better edge to the point that now it's just a wild, wild west show, this industry will be affected. And unless the industry can clamp down on Mega and all these other social media platforms, in which I don't think that they're going to be able to, basically there's going to be a great deal of people's lives that's going to fall through the cracks. It's going to be destroyed. Maybe it is time to call the herd out in this type of industry, because this industry has been the very industry that has been putting and pumping out so much wicked, demonic activity, material to our children, that now our children has become absolutely walking, talking zombies. It's not just the video games, it's the movies. And whenever I can go through my movie channel and 2/3 of them is either supernatural paranoid behavior pertaining to something spooky, or something kind of like the Exorcist movie, or the other third of the movies is basically like the Chainsaw Massacre, towards being bloody and gory, and people cutting one another's heads off and doing all the other stuff. Whenever it comes to an industry that needed to be tweaked, that needed to be reformed pertaining to Hollywood, my God, this needed doing 30 plus years ago pertaining to the damages that they was doing to this country. They have damaged this country by putting out all this poison. You no longer see the Waltons or the Beverly Hillbillies or Gilligan's Island or the Brady Bunch or even Mr. Rogers. I don't even know if they got Sesame Street on TV anymore. You know why they don't have that stuff on TV anymore? Because now everybody's taste buds has changed. They no longer want to see those things. They're no longer interested in the History Channel. They're no longer interested in the things that at one time we considered to be family-oriented shows. And because of it, Hollywood should be accountable for creating monsters. That's one reason why that we're seeing all the violence over here in America, is because Hollywood has brainwashed so many people. That this is just one example, and it's only probably 1% of a 1% that has caused all this damage. But because it was a Wild Wild West show and they could get away with basically doing whatever that they wanted to do, and at the time whenever they was making all them movies, the FBI would make sure under piracy rights that nobody would be able to go in there and do that. Well, today, listen to me, today you can go into a mainstream movie that is just now breaking on the big screen, and walk in there with a camera, a regular portable camera, put it in your pocket. Don't hold it in your hand. Because if you hold it in your hand, everybody in the world's going to know what you're doing. Or you could attach it on your collar some way or another, make it look like a police radio or something. But people can go into a theater, take their telephone and record that whole movie, and if they know what they're doing, they can take the content home, they can edit it, tweet it, do everything that they need to do to it, and make it look almost genuine of something that did come out of Hollywood screenplay, and then turn around and start piracying that same movie that basically hadn't even made its debut yet, and people start making money off of that movie. So whenever it comes to the internet being a Wild Wild West show, that's exactly what it has been for the past 10 years. We have noticed this just within the past 10 years, and there's really no way that because it's so much of it, and because it's so plentiful now pertaining to all the smartphones and all the recording cameras and all the social media platforms, it's almost to the point that now the FBI cannot protect these people. The FBI cannot protect this industry. That at one time the FBI was protecting this industry. Every now and then there would be a loose screw. Every now and then there'd be somebody that'd get out there and they'd get away with something. But ordinarily, if they'd done it long enough, they still got caught. Well, there's so much of it going on today, there's no way that the FBI can catch everybody that's streamlining and pirating various things and making money off of other people's material. Because it's too much of it. Once more, where does the fault fall? It falls upon the people that created all this stuff and put it out there for the public. It's one thing that the military was using and various government officials was using pertaining to the internet. And today, some sneaky person could actually go into a military base computer website and make it look legitimate, like another country was bringing a threat to another country, and could actually start a calamity just over nonsense over the computer. Because it's gotten to the point that you can make things look so real. If you know what you're doing, you can take Bill Clinton's voice and put his voice in behind Donald Duck, and make Donald Duck look like that it's Bill Clinton that's standing in behind the scenes somewhere reading off some sort of a manuscript of Donald Duck doing the talking like Bill Clinton. I don't know how to do all that. And it used to be called special effects. And it was only certain people that had the license to do that. Today, if you've done enough homework and if you've done enough study and you got the right kind of equipment at home, I guess you can make something out of a little bit of nothing now. To where it used to cost them, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars just to be able to make a movie. Because I think the movie Dukes of Hazzard, I think in total they went through how many of those cars? Something like 1,200 or 1,500 cars. Some of these movies, they got to use repetitiously 7, 8, 10 different cars, and to basically make it look like the one scene of that one accident or of that one car. And it costs money to buy cars. It costs money for stuntmen. It costs money for cameramen. Well, now whenever you can sit at home and people are asphyxiated on animated movies to begin with, and you can sit there and make your own movie, well, guess what you just got through doing to that industry? You just got through knocking that industry in the head. Because why does anybody want to pay $8, $10, $12 for a big movies channel, and plus $20 for popcorn and Coke? Basically, you're going to spend about $30 per seat now if you go into a big theater somewhere. On average, on the nice ones, you're going to go in and spend that kind of money whenever you can basically get it off the internet for free. Once more, what was I taught growing up? I was taught the American way was why buy the cow whenever you get the milk free. And so many of these young girls have sold themselves out to the point that they have damaged their integrity, they have damaged their quality, they have damaged themselves in ways that I can't even begin to explain. And I do think that I have explained it this way pertaining to Honda and Nissan. I think it's more so Honda. Hardly ever you see Honda run a big sale on their new automobiles, and if you do see a sale, ordinarily it's only a few $100s. Honda does not diminish the quality of their product. They're not like Chrysler. They're not like Ford. They're not like some of these other car manufacturers that basically buy a brand new vehicle that people paid $40,000 for last year, and today, because they're running a sale, you get the same hot item for $22,000. Well, what did that just do to the people that had to pay $40,000? You just got through diminishing the quality of your product. Like I said, Honda, I think it's Honda, it may be Nissan. It's a foreign company out there that refuses to do that to themselves because they know long term it can be not only damaging, but it can be destructive. It can be destructive to that industry. It can be destructive to that product. It can be destructive in millions of people's lives. It's dependent upon that product standing true to its worthiness. In other words, you come out of the gate and you said, my product is worth this, and you may compromise a couple $100, but you ain't going to compromise like Chrysler and Ford and some of these other companies compromise and basically giving your product away. Because whenever you're giving your product away, you just got through damaging the quality of your own product. Basically, that's what the movie industry has done by allowing for artificial intelligence to come onto the scene, and now you can have just a little bit of equipment with a little bit of knowledge, and you can sit and make your own animated movie and make it look so real that you'll have 5 million hits in one night because it was so overwhelming. And now, because you got 5 million hits, now the bigger networks is interested in you. Hey, buddy, you want to sell your story? Hey, what do you take for that? It's a Wild Wild West show. Whenever the government was confining this material towards keeping it in-house and the military, it was okay. But whenever they turned all this over to the public, then is whenever it become a Wild Wild West show. And today, I don't even know if it can be reversed. The genie is basically already out of the bottle. It's out of the bottle. It's kind of like trying to put toothpaste back into a toothpaste tube, which is basically impossible. And because of it, I really think that the whole Hollywood industry is going to have to conform, and they're going to have to do stuff now on a much cheaper scale rather than go out here and tear up 10 or 12, 15 different automobiles using the same automobile, looking identically, but the quality of that movie is going to be so second rate or third rate to the point that if they didn't animate it, it probably wouldn't look good at all, because now instead of them using 15 automobiles, now they have to do it only in 1 or 2. You see what I'm saying? It has damaged the quality of their product. What is their product? Making movies. That's their product. And now, because of all the high-tech stuff out there, now you got people that can make it look just as real, if not better, than what they can. On pennies. On pennies! They don't have to tear up 15 automobiles. they can make it all look real with animated features. So if you was in this industry, just think about it. If you was in this industry, would you not be demanding for something to happen pertaining to striking? Sure you would. I'm going to say one more thing in exchange toward trying to put a good light on artificial intelligence. Ever since humanity has been struggling towards everybody wanting to be the king of the mountain, towards everybody struggling towards a better way, there's always been complications, and there's usually always been hardship that went along with it. I'll just use this as an illustration. Whenever they was bringing produce from the East Coast, going up through Washington, D.C., taking it up to the hills of Pennsylvania and Virginia, etc., they had a thing called the C&O Canal that had, I think, about 170 different lots that raised the boat from going from one level to another level, that eventually you could take a big boat with a lot of produce on it and take it all the way uphill and not have to worry about horses and buggies. Well, whenever they come out with the railroad industry, that the Indians called the Iron Horse, that basically put an end to that industry. And there was actually wars on the C&O Canal of people that was fighting other people towards not wanting progression to come forth. Of course, we've seen what wound up heading and winning over above and beyond the C&O Canal. And basically the same thing happened with barbed wire back years and years ago, going all the way back into the 14th, 15th, 16th century, whenever you did have the cowboys and Indians over here, and then people started taming the land, and then the next thing you know, they'd take their piece of property and they would fence it all off, and basically barbed wire costed wars, costed people's lives. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that anytime there's change, it causes either minor or major difficulty. It has always been that way since basically the wheel was created, since fire was discovered. There's always going to be somebody that's going to be, you're going to be bucking the system because they've already got a good footing towards that old industry. And you may as well get ready for the internet to cause damages that's not just going to be in this area, but it's going to be in other areas too. I'm just going to throw this out there real quick, in which in one way it'd be good for the consumer pertaining to the medical industry, or basically the mechanic industry, or the plumbing industry, or any other industry out there. All you got to do is ask Google, I got a 1999 Honda Accord that I'm having trouble with it not starting. What do I need to look for? And I guarantee you, Google will search it, and the next thing you'll know, you'll have 20 different videos of 20 different people that's got the same year model car that'll tell you different ideals about how to fix your problem. Same way with plumbing, same way with your lawnmower, same way with anything. All you got to do is Google the information, and man, it's instantaneously right in front of you. So if Google is taking the lead way in so many businesses this way, do you not think that that's eventually going to have an effect on the plumbing industry? Yes. You think that's going to have an effect on the mechanical industry? Yes. Do you think that's going to have an effect on other types of industries out there? Yes. Just like the Hollywood movie industry, it's going to have an effect on them too as well. And there's probably things that I can't even think about right now because there's so many that who would have thought that the internet would have affected that. But eventually it all come full circle. I guarantee you it all come full circle. And I just don't know how the governments is going to be able to put rails on this stuff to control it because of all these mama and papa businesses as well as Hollywood that's basically gonna put a hurt to them. It really is. It's gonna put a real hurt to a lot of industries. Artificial intelligence. In addition to the damages that it can do to the young people and them witnessing stuff and seeing stuff with these undeveloped minds that they're not supposed to be looking at right now. And basically what I'm talking about there is porn. Because just any and everybody, unless you've got some sort of security system on your child's phone, all they got to do is Google porn or something sex or something this or something that, and it immediately pop up, unless you got some kind of security system on that phone to where 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids now can watch hardcore XXX porn just like if they was an adult. And you can't tell me that will not have a profound effect upon a society. We're already having a profound effect upon a society pertaining to people no longer valuing life, towards getting out here and shooting 10, 12, 20 people at a time, schools, churches, nightclubs, outings, etc. We're already seeing it having a profound effect upon the society. So what else is the United States government going to allow to come into our lives that we have been paying these people all along to protect us over? Not counting all the privacy rights that's been now hurled upon, not counting people's bank accounts being hacked, people's now losing access to different things because somebody's come online and said, oh, no, that belongs to me, that's mine. Just causing all kinds of havoc out there with the legal counsel pertaining to people basically being piracy. Somebody told me the other day that if you had somebody out in California that wanted to jump into somebody's rental property, that it could take up to 6 months before you finally got that individual out of the house. And the owner to that property would have to go file this and go file that. They'd have to go do this. Then they got to wait a certain amount of time. And then they got to file that. Yeah. Whenever it's all said and done with, the homeowner basically just got to being run over by some hoodlum, somebody that wanted to scam the system, piracy the system. Let's live in this house for 6 months. In the meantime, it's going to take them this long before they can finally come in here and grab up our couch in our living room suit and throw it out there in the yard somewhere. It's become awful. It's become awful. So good luck to all of us. Good luck to all of us while we sit idly by and we realize how much that we've been lied to and lied about. And as we sit back and we watch the planet heating up now in areas like it has never ever heated up before as far as climate disasters, that is breaking all-time records again and again and again. We've had a pattern now for the past 10 years of it exceeding and breaking the old pattern, the old records. And when are we going to wake up to realize this
mainstream Republicans or these
this stuff is real? This stuff is damaging and destroying
I don't think it comes
human beings' lives. When are we going to wake up to identify that the devil, the wolf, is at the door? We're under an invasion. And it's not just the illegal immigrants. It's not just what the illegal immigrants is bringing over here pertaining to fentanyl and all the other stuff, but it's all the above. And if we, as human beings, supposed to be the most intelligent thing on the earth, in which I question that, I really do, because I've seen some very, very smart animals watching various shows on TV and how that they protect their young and etc. But if we don't watch, this whole thing is going to get out of hand, and whenever it does, I don't know that any of us is going to be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again towards pre-COVID conditions before all this stuff broke out. And you can't tell me that that wasn't the main source, the core of origin, that has upset the apple cart in such of a degree, not just in the United States, but basically all over the world. COVID. Unbelievable. And it's only getting worse. And it's only going to get worse.
And yes, there would be fights in Congress, and we'd have to see what the composition of Congress looked like, and
which can be more than $9,000.
Yeah.
That from happening. And so again, when I look at this, if you're making me choose sides, I'll be on the side that Adam Schiff is not on, probably. I'll be with the studios. And this is going to be great for reality TV stars. I came from reality TV, so reality TV, they don't pay you garbage, but look out for reality TV shows that are going to boom.
That's what's going to happen while they're on strike. But with the actors, they are trying to protect their work and not have it reused in AI.
The likeness, I agree with that.
Right, and so, but you don't know how it's going to be used down the road. But again, Disney's been run into the ground, and Bob Iger's talking a big game. Hey, you know what? If you hadn't driven all your customers away, maybe you wouldn't be flat on your back, Bob. Biden's new student loan forgiveness program, Why Am I Smiling, is going to cost us taxpayers 3 times what the administration is claiming.
Plus, Biden's former press secretary Jen Psaki says, our next guest, he may have been co-opted by a foreign agent. I haven't heard that argument before. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer is going to join us and address that after the break.
You got hustlers everywhere, scam artists everywhere. That's going to come out of the woodwork more so now today than ever before because of hard times. You think that you've seen hustlers and scam artists with people trying to steal people's identity, and they're finding out who's got money, who don't have money, and whose account that they can break into and whose account they can't break into. You think you've seen bad things happening pertaining to the internet? You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen even the beginning tip of the iceberg yet towards what's actually going to occur as people become more and more desperate. They'll become more devious in their thinking. They'll become more wicked in their doings. They won't care how many lives that they affect. They won't care how many people's lives that they destroy. It's basically turning into a hellish planet to the point that it's no longer going to be worth living in. And I tend to wonder if the big guys, the really big guys, the superpowers, that maybe that's what they're striving towards. Maybe they're wanting to get things into perspective to where people basically throw up their hands and say, well, you know what? It's no longer worth it. Life is no longer worth the fight. Life is no longer worth the sacrifice. Life is no longer worth the trouble. And let's just end it. Let's just end it by destroying the planet and everything on the planet. Maybe that's where this whole concept is heading to. I don't know. I hope to God that it ain't heading that way, but who's to say that it ain't? We got some very, very wicked people in the world today. We got some people in the world today that really don't care about their own personal life, much less their neighbor's life down the road. You know, whenever Jesus said one of the greatest commandments of all the commandments was to love thy God with all thy heart, and the second commandment was to love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, whenever you're dealing with a society that no longer loves itself, no longer loves God, and for darn sure don't love its neighbor, you're dealing with a very, very wicked, demonic society that's basically in a cesspool of engulfing or destroying itself in a self-destroying mode. like I made mention before, the way America's been going, in the direction that we're going in, and it's really, really sad that instead of us having to worry about an oncoming enemy coming from overseas somewhere and actually doing an attack on us like they did in Pearl Harbor Day in World War II, basically that sealed the deal towards America's getting involved with World War II, they're probably sitting back and they're sniggering and giggling and laughing, our adversaries are, towards saying, wow, we just give it enough time, they'll basically weaken themselves. If they don't destroy themselves, they'll weaken themselves to the point that all we got to do is basically walk in and take them over. And I tend to wonder if that's not what Brezhnev or Gorbachev or somebody was thinking whenever they said, we will take the American people over and never fire a shot. We'll contaminate them from within. We'll destroy them with drugs. We'll destroy them with pornography. We'll destroy them with the internet. We'll destroy them in all these other areas. And basically, whenever it's all said and done with, after they've got through weakening themselves or destroying themselves, we'll just walk in and take the place over. Who's to say that that wasn't the concept? Who's to say that the concept, beginning all the way, I guess back somewhere, the way I understand it, some people would like to point it all the way back to Jesus's disciples, whenever I think it was Peter that was the builder, pertaining to the Masons. Who's to say that the concept going all the way back to 2,000 years ago wasn't the concept towards destroying humanity this way? That way, whenever the system becomes so torn, whenever the system becomes so broken, somebody would come onto the scene, such as the false prophet or the Antichrist, and basically have the solution to all the world's problems, and everybody fall for that person. That would basically ultimately be the very person that would change the system to the New World Order system pertaining to 666. I guarantee you there's some other power, there's some other group of people that's in behind all this, that's deliberately planning this out and setting a sail for the destruction of humanity. I don't know if it's the Russian government. I don't know if it's China pertaining to COVID, that was just the beginning phases of all this. As North Korea kept saying, we got a Christmas present for the Americans. We have a Christmas present. And boy, did we ever get that present. My God, what a Christmas present. This has been nothing but a nightmare. And the nightmare is even going to become more nightmarisher, especially as we see the forces of nature no longer cooperating with humanity in seeing all this destruction on one level or another. And every time that happens, it diminishes the resources. Every time some idiot like Russia just got through basically putting a boycott on the grain over there, you're basically diminishing the resources. And as you're diminishing the resources, you're basically driving the prices up, because everything is based around supply and demand. And whenever you got more of a demand and you got a supply, then the prices can go up. It doesn't matter if it's over oil, don't matter if it's over wheat that generates bread, it don't matter if it's cows, it don't matter if it's eggs, it don't matter what it is. It's time that the American people woke up to this stuff. Thank God the farmers around here are getting rains this year, to the point that maybe they will have adequate crops. You know, there's a lot of things going on right now that's a whole lot worse than what America's going through over in Spain, Europe, Italy, pertaining to the heat and pertaining to the housing, pertaining to the energy sources, pertaining to the food shortages. There's a whole lot of things right now going on, and we think that a lot's going on over here in America, and it really is. But whenever you get to looking at India, and you get to looking at China, and you get to looking at Africa, and you get to looking at South America and Mexico and all these other continents, there is trouble on the horizon. just as the Bible talks about that in the last days Satan will come down in great, great wrath, because it or he knoweth its time is short. And I continue to keep saying that again and again and again on other messages that I put out. And whenever you're talking about a 2-tier system or a 3-tier system, you got the mighty and the rich. Going back to the Egyptians, you got the has and the has-nots, and now you got basically a competition that the hases want to keep what they got. They don't want to share it with the has-nots, and the has-nots that used to have a game plan or a goal or an ideal, a vision of one day them struggling and being successful, being loyal to a company, and them accomplishing what they need to accomplish towards living out their golden years, that dream, that ideal is almost completely, totally out the window. To where the average working person getting a high school education and going out here starting a job working for McDonald's or working for Walmart or working for whoever, a private enterprise or whatever, the ideal of that person working and staying committed to that company for 30, 35, 40 years and then retiring and having a good, easy, casual, golden year rocking chair moment is almost completely out the door. And to be quite honest with you, I have really more of a tendency of believing that the Social Security Department and the Disability Department, as well as all these other amenities that this government has set up for itself, I personally believe that we're seeing the beginning of the end of all that too. So what's going to happen to us? I think we're going to go further with artificial intelligence. I think eventually they will start putting chips in people like they've been doing now for several years over in Sweden. I think eventually they'll make a chip that have a window in it with cyanide in it, and once that person, he or she, becomes no longer an asset to their government, somebody on the other end will open that little door, and within about 4 to 15 minutes you'll basically pass away, and there'll be people called upon, kind of like pooper snoopers, going around picking up bodies and exterminating them and putting them in fire pits and having them destroyed. As one group of people is coming into the world, another group of people will be going out to the world. I think they call that euthanasia. That's what I think is going to happen. But before that happens in that terminology, I think another thing's going to happen, like a purging, but they're going to turn it into a game, kind of like Hunger Games. And there'll be internet controllers above us that will be able to know everything about our lives, to the degree that our governments will become so corrupt that basically they'll cause us to turn on each other, and they'll turn it into a game. And in the meantime, the rich and the powerful, the hases, they'll continue to have what they have, and even more so, while the rich and the powerful sit back, kind of like watching the gladiators get ate up, or the Christians getting ate up by the Romans. They'll basically sit back on their TVs and watch it in live, but it won't be a movie. It'll actually be occurring. That's kind of like what that they can do today pertaining to the military. They can basically blow up a whole city block or even an automobile and never leave their seat. They can sit there on satellite and come in there with drones or whatever, and they can basically play cops and robbers now in behind a computer. I think that's where we're going. I really do. And I think it's sad that society's going to be going that way. Right now we think it's cute Right now we see all these little commercials pertaining to artificial intelligence, and we think, ooh, that's the best thing. Man, that's the way everybody's going. Man, that's going to be the best thing since the existence of toilet paper, isn't it? Well, see, that's what they would like for us to believe. And that's the luring effect that they're luring us into. But as we get lured into this, ultimately there will be a cost. And the cost will be towards, first of all, losing all your privacy. Second of all, somebody being in control of your life. And third, whenever they don't no longer want to see fit for you to live, because now you become a liability rather than an asset, they just hit a little button. Within a few minutes, your heart quits beating. I think, what was it, a movie like Metrics or something like that they come out with, a scientific movie like that? And you may say, there's no way that that's going to happen. Really? Really? The first thing that I took notice whenever the COVID first broke out here in America was they started putting all these stickers on floors in Walmarts. And basically their stickers said, stay apart 6 feet. 6 feet, stay apart. 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6, 6, 6. That was one of the first things that I noticed whenever COVID first broke out. 6 feet from distancing yourself. How come it couldn't have been 5? How come it couldn't have been 4? How come it couldn't have been 7? It had to be 6 feet. Once more, getting us familiarized, getting us brainwashed with that number 666. That way it won't be so outlandish to us. That way it will be accepted. It's a part of brainwashing society. And people that listen to this, they'll probably say, this guy is really off of his freaking bonkers. He's really just coming up with a bunch of scientific, you know what. And the thing about it is, no, I'm not. This is all biblical Bible prophecy that was prophesied thousands and thousands of years ago, way before you and me and anybody else that's living to this day was ever born. These ideals and these concepts was already there towards what was going to happen and how it was going to happen, and almost down to the day of when it was going to happen.
Just another question on this politics, and we'll move to the substance. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, who's afraid of a third party? Senator, it says the progressive complaint is that if a no labels ticket made it into enough state presidential ballots in 2024, it couldn't win, but could be a spoiler. Democrats say a third candidate would likely take more votes from Mr. Biden, perhaps deny him the 270 electoral college votes to win and throw the election into the House. With each state having one vote for president, they say Mr. Trump would likely be the winner. First of all, do you know how many states no labels is on the ballot so far?
I don't have the exact count on
that. About 40.
They have been working very diligently, and I assume that they're going to be on all. Let me just say this about the spoilers. The spoiler would be as if the American people don't have the opportunity to push the respective parties, Democrat and Republican Party, off their extreme views. So the spoiler would be no options.
We've heard this middle ground on a lot of these issues, but when it comes to abortion, it says America must strike a balance between protecting women's rights to control their own reproductive health and our society's responsibility to protect human life.
There you go again.
What do you say to
another big issue that has recently come up? You take
keep your cool this summer.
You take what the Supreme Court has done towards basically dropping it now in all the states' responsibilities. They basically set back now for the past 30, 40 years during the baby boom era, during the Beatles and rock and roll era, during the Woodstock era. They have set back, okay, and they have allowed for everybody to become adapted or adjusted to having abortions anytime if they wanted. And some has actually had as many as 3 or 4, 5 abortions a year by different men, slipping around from one bedroom to another. Okay? But now they've pulled the biscuit out of everybody's mouth, and they've told everybody, you can't do that. We're no longer going to mandate that through a federal law, and because of it, it has caused total chaos, just like our reefs now dying because the water has become so warm and so hot that now we can actually visually, tangibly see our planet dying right in front of our very eyes. Right in front of our very, very eyes. How pathetically sad can that be? Let's watch.
Tonight, the urgent search for two young children, a brother and sister just 9 months old and 2 years old, swept away in the storms in the Northeast. All part of the deadly flooding, the storms and torrential rains in several states. Flash flooding blamed for at least 5 deaths in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Roads washed away, cars buried under rocks and mud. Thousands of flights delayed or canceled today. Trevor Ault in the flood zone. Also tonight, the deadly and record-breaking heat in the U.S. and across Europe. Here at home, at least 15 states tonight under heat advisories and warnings. Phoenix hitting 110 degrees for the 18th day in a row. And tonight, the stunning temperatures of the waters off Florida and what they have noticed there already. The smoke from the Canadian wildfires moving in again. 20 states tonight under air quality alerts from Montana straight across to the Northeast. Victor Kendo on this heat and climate, and Ginger Z, of course, timing it out. Here in New York tonight, chilling new clues in the serial killer investigation. The suspect, an architect and father, charged with murdering at least 3 women. How many cases could there be? What authorities are now saying and what they have found in his home. Aaron Kaczynski tonight. The 68-year-old woman forced to jump into action and fly the plane when the pilot suffered a medical emergency. How she crashed the plane near the runway and survived. The war in Ukraine, and tonight the attack on a key bridge that Russia uses, linking Crimea to Russia. What Vladimir Putin is saying about this tonight, will he respond? James Longman reporting from inside Ukraine. Here in the U.S. tonight, the race for the White House, the major shakeup for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, his staff and his campaign team.
I don't guess they're even going to mention the grain. Maybe they're not aware of it yet.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It is great to start another week with all of you at home. We do begin tonight with the urgent search for a brother and sister swept away during the storms here in the Northeast. The flooding has been deadly in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. At least 5 people have been killed. And now that search for a 2-year-old girl and her 9-month-old brother washed away when their family's car was suddenly slammed by a wall of water, lifted up, and then washed away. The mother did not survive. The children missing. Nearly 5 inches of rain falling in just 90 minutes in weekend storms, flooding roads, destroying them. That family trying to escape as their car was suddenly carried away by the rushing waters. They weren't out driving through these floods. They were suddenly surrounded. The father, a 4-year-old son, and the grandmother surviving. Again, the search for the 2 young children at this hour. The power of that water tossing cars to the side of the road, flipping others upside down. In Warren County, New Jersey, this car buried in rocks and mud. Just north of Philadelphia, a sinkhole knocking a freight train off its tracks right there, one car carrying chemicals. And tonight, of course, the other major concern moving in yet again, the air quality alerts spreading. Take a look at this. This is Boston's skyline today, the haze across much of the Northeast. And here's the map tonight showing the smoke as it moves in from Montana straight across to the Northeast over the next 24 hours. All of this, plus the record heat. Tens of millions facing dangerous temperatures. And tonight the temperatures being recorded in the waters right off of Florida. What they're seeing already. Ginger Z is here, but first ABC's Trevor Ault leading us off on the deadly storms. He's in Warren County, New Jersey tonight.
Tonight, first responders in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia, are desperately searching for 2 young children still missing after their family's vehicle was overtaken by a wall of water.
These people did not drive into high water. They were caught. This was a flash flood.
Police releasing these photos of 2-year-old Maddie and 9-month-old Conrad Shields. Their mother, 32-year-old Katie Seeley, did not survive. The family was visiting from South Carolina on their way to a barbecue when they were swept away. Seeley's husband, another child, and their grandmother survived.
We ask that you continue to pray for the return of Conrad and Mattie and for the safety of all those committed to bringing them home to us.
The storms are part of a powerful system that rocked the Northeast. From Connecticut to New Hampshire, a sinkhole being blamed for this train derailment just outside Philadelphia this morning. At least 1 car carrying a chemical used for dry cleaning. Thankfully, no injuries or leaks. To the north, drone video capturing the devastation in Warren County, New Jersey. Karen Grolinsky and Eva Smith's home flooding on their anniversary.
I was in shock for 2 days, and now all I want to do is cry. Because everything, we worked so hard and we don't have a lot of money.
Governor Murphy declaring a state of emergency.
And David, emergency workers tell me there was so much rainfall, a river diverted and came barreling over this hillside. Look at all this debris here. This is a highway here. And while emergency workers are trying to get it cleared out, the water now just continues pushing down this side street. It's putting even more homes at risk of flooding. David?
A summer of extremes, and we're only midway through it. Trevor, thank you. The other part of the story tonight, the life-threatening heat wave. Authorities pointing to evidence of climate change again here in this country and across Europe. In the U.S., more than 90 million Americans in at least 15 states under heat alerts tonight. Phoenix hitting 110 degrees for an 18th day in a row. And as I mentioned, the alarming water temperatures off Florida tonight and what they're seeing in the coral. ABC's Victor Kendo out on the water tonight on this heat and the changing climate.
Tonight, this record-breaking heat wave scorching millions across the country, around the world, and in the ocean, threatening lives and livelihoods. Phoenix tying a record for 18 straight days of 110 degrees or higher. The air conditioning failing at this apartment building.
We can't even cook. We can't even do anything at home. As soon as you turn the stove to cook, it turns to 95 degrees inside.
Overseas, parts of Europe on fire as that Mediterranean heat wave intensifies. Evacuations near the Greek capital of Athens as a wildfire rages out of control. This inferno in Spain's Canary Islands destroying 10,000 acres, forcing thousands from their homes. And here in the U.S., more evidence of the changing climate. The temperature in the waters off Florida, normally in the 80s this time of year, now in the 90s, threatening vital coral reefs.
Some of our long-term monitoring sites here off of Miami are starting to show signs of early coral bleaching.
Over time, excessively hot water can kill coral, causing those white spots. Experts warn this could be one of the most severe bleaching events ever, with the peak of summer still to come.
The Florida Keys literally would not exist if it were not for the coral reef tract.
And the water temperature off Miami Beach, 95 degrees today. Miami just hit a record 36 consecutive days with a heat index of 100 degrees. David?
Really is extraordinary. Victor Kendo tonight. Victor, thank you. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z tracking it all. And of course, Ginger, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's only mid-July. We still have a long way to go here this summer.
That's the thing. It started so early, David. So now it's pick a record, any record on the map. Let's focus on Phoenix. Not only this morning waking up for the 8th day in a row, which they've never done at 90 plus consecutively, but breaking that record of 110 plus. And there is no end in sight. Somewhere like El Paso that has seen a consecutive 100 plus for 32 days, that smashes their old record. And they'll keep smashing it day after day because we stay much above average through the end of the month. Now I want to take you to the other part, the smoke. So the wildfires have still been record-breaking up in Canada. That smoke in the Great Lakes, the southeast, tomorrow settles upstate New York and Vermont as well tomorrow evening before we clear it out because there are storms. Tonight, it's about severe thunderstorm watches, lots of them, Indianapolis, Memphis to Little Rock. Tomorrow night, this part of the Northeast, where we are now up to 300% of normal for the first 2 weeks of July, David, going to get more rain tomorrow evening.
All right, Ginger Z with us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow, Ginger. Thank you. We're going to move on now to the other news this Monday night and the chilling new clues after the arrest of a suspected serial killer, a New York architect and father, accused of murdering at least 3 women. Tonight, how many more cases could there be and what they have now found in the suspect's home? Here's our senior investigative reporter, Aaron Kutursky, tonight.
The painstaking search for clues in the Gilgo Beach serial killings is expanding tonight to every crevice of the suspect's life, including 2 storage units, along with the suburban Long Island home of Rex Heuermann, the architect and father charged with murdering 3 young women he allegedly solicited for sex and then killed.
They're going inch by inch by inch through that house.
In the basement, police now say they found more than 200
freaking monsters.
Owners of a Chevy Avalanche, the vehicle an eyewitness linked to the suspect. Prosecutors say eyewitnesses gave them a description of Heuermann. He's a big guy.
He was described as 6'4" or 6'6", 250 plus pounds, and just not like a muscle-bound person, but just a very large human being, and that's who he is.
You use the word ogre in court.
Yeah, well, that was one of the witnesses utilized that term, ogre, meaning a very thick, thick-framed individual.
Prosecutors said DNA from discarded pizza crust matched DNA from a hair found on the burlap used to wrap the victims. Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, and Melissa Bartholomew were discovered in December 2010. Investigators locating their skeletal remains alongside Ocean Parkway. The women in their 20s, petite and sex workers, all found within a quarter mile of each other. The DA told us they're pulling a mountain of evidence out of his home here. David, it's all being swabbed for DNA to see if there's a link to other Gilgo Beach victims. And David, police all over the state are now looking through their cold case files to see if there may be a connection to this very same suspect. David?
You'll follow it for us, Aaron Petersky, again tonight. Thanks, Aaron. Now to the passenger in a small plane forced to take the controls after the pilot suffered a medical emergency during a flight from Westchester County, New York to Martha's Vineyard. The passenger, a 68-year-old woman, crash landing the plane near the runway and surviving with that pilot. Here's Janae Norman tonight.
Tonight, a frightening and dangerous emergency landing navigated by a passenger forced to take control of a small single-engine plane.
Got a single aircraft down on the runway 6, one patient responsive at the time.
The passenger, a 68-year-old woman from Connecticut, was flying alone with...
Oh, she's lucky. Man, is she ever lucky.
Smoke.
Thanks very much. And the FAA is investigating why an emergency slide fell out of a United Airlines jet today near Chicago's O'Hare Airport. The slide came down in a neighborhood near the airport. The 767 with 165 people on board landed safely. The FAA says maintenance workers then discovered the slide was missing. United said it immediately contacted the FAA and was working to figure out how it happened. Also tonight, the derailment of a freight train outside Philadelphia. Officials say 15 of the 40 cars on the CSX train jumped the tracks. Although some of the cars were carrying chemicals, authorities say there were no hazardous spills. The cause is under investigation. 6 months before the Iowa caucuses, Donald Trump's chief rival for the...
And this is a more typical...
Symbolic blow to Russian prestige. While back here on the battlefields of Ukraine, the fight rages on. Here on the very edge of newly liberated territory, now to...
Well, I think we've seen enough for today. Good luck to all of us. Good luck and shalom. Good luck and shalom. What's warming up the water is what I told you. Excess amount of heat coming up from the center of the earth. Good luck.